Genesis in verse 9, it says, "Then Jacob prayed, O God of my grandfather Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, you told me, return to your own land and to your relatives, and you promised me I will treat you kindly. I'm not worthy of all the unfailing love and faithfulness that you have shown to me, your servant. When I left home and crossed the Jordan River, I owned nothing except a walking stick. Now my household fills 2 large camps. O Lord, please rescue me from the hand of my brother Esau. I am afraid that he is coming to attack me along with my wives and children. But you promised me I will surely treat you kindly and will multiply your descendants until they become numerous as the sands along the seashore, too many to count." Now, even though Jacob had been writing his own story, as soon as he calls on God, God answers. Chapter 32, verse 24, it says this, "This left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break." Now, imagine you're at a crossroads, you're at a crisis. You're caught between 2 forces that are angry and upset with you, and you get down and you lay your heart out before God, claiming the promises of his father and his grandfather, and he says, "God, I know that I'm obeying you and going home. What's going on?" Then in the middle of your living room, a strange man appears, wearing a WWF wrestling uniform, telling you that there's a ring outside and says, "You know what, God's answer to your prayer? Let's go wrestle." I don't know if Jacob had, because he's about 97 years old at this point, I don't know if he had a mild heart attack when he's pacing all alone in his camp because he had sent his family across the river for protection. And he's pacing back and forth, and all of a sudden this man shows up. I don't know if he thought it was Esau. I don't know if he had a heart attack. I don't know what happened. I don't know if this man snuck up behind him and put him in a half Nelson, and Jacob just started fighting back. But this wrestling match ensued. And if you read the rest of the passage, you see that Jacob knew and understood that this man was either God himself or an angel from God. Because he said, "I have seen the face of God." A lot of these teenagers, you saw it on the video and you didn't get to see all of them because of time, made decisions these past 2 weeks at camp. They're going to make God a priority. They're going to stand up for God in their schools. Some of them made a salvation decision for the very first time, giving their life over to God. They have begun a wrestling match with God. And the wrestling match is going to be God pulling them towards Him and the world pulling them towards the world. And while the passion and the excitement is strong and great right now, eventually, as in any wrestling match, you will get tired. Your energy and excitement will wane, and you'll wonder if it will ever end. Now, I don't know what Jacob's motivations were. Some of the commentaries say that by him asking for a blessing from God, he was submitting himself to the authority of God. Some of them say that all Jacob cared about was the blessing and didn't really care about God because of the way he lived his life. But I don't know. But one thing I do know is that when he found God, he refused to let go. When he came in touch and contact with God, he said, "There's nothing that this life can do to tear me away. I am going to hang on." They wrestled all night long. The sun was coming up into the sky. This angel, or God himself, knew it was time to go, showing and revealing his power, showing that he allowed Jacob to wrestle with him. He reaches out and touches his hip. And in that moment, the Bible tells us his hip was wrenched from its socket. Jacob still didn't let go. You know, so many times life brings curveballs or pain or tragedy or struggles. It brings mocking friends. It brings a breakup in relationship. It brings financial struggles. It brings divorce. It brings disease, death. Life brings so many bad things because of sin. And when that happens, when our hip is wrenched out of the socket, we let go of God. And we look at God and we say, "Look what you did to me. Look at this," or "I can't trust you anymore." But Jacob wouldn't let go. He knew the promises from his grandfather, his father, and given to him. He had to hear the stories of the provision, of how God provided the ram for Abraham as his father was about to be sacrificed on the idol, on the altar. He had to hear all of the miraculous provisions, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed, the victories that Abraham experienced as a general. The love story of how Isaac found Rebekah, all because of God. And in this wrestling match, I can't help but think that Jacob is sitting there thinking, I know you're God. I know that I can trust you. I know you promised this. But will you really write a compelling story with my life if I give it up to you? And it's a question that we all have to ask. It's a question that every single day we have to look into our hearts and ask, am I really allowing God to write my story? And is it worth it? Regardless of Jacob's motivation, his determination was honored by God. In verses 28 and 29, your name will no longer be Jacob, the man told him. From now on you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and with men and have won. Please tell me your name, Jacob said. Why do you want to know my name? Then he blessed Jacob there. God honored his determination. God honored his motivation to stay connected to God and not let go. And he blessed him then and there. You know, God doesn't always write the story the way that we would. Look at Joseph. Here's a young man that has a dream of great promise, and his brothers are going to bow down to him, and he knows something good is going to happen. The very next thing, he's sold by those very brothers into slavery. Once he begins to get his head above water and do well and find at least some hope in the life that he's been destined to, he's accused of a crime that he did not commit, and he's thrown into jail. Once again, he makes the best of his situation and begins to get his head above water, and God is blessing and honoring and giving him position. And then he's forgotten and betrayed by the man that said he would remember him. Now, when you look at our lives and you look at how God writes our stories, if you ask Joseph, would you give up being sold into slavery? Would you give up being accused of a crime and spending a long time in prison in order to live a comfy, good life, but not being able to save your family? Not being able to protect your family and the line that the Messiah would be born from? Would you be willing to give up all of that so you didn't have to go through this? Do you think Joseph would say, yeah, I'd take the easy way? You know, we have limited perspective on God's story. We come to a place where all of a sudden we don't have work, or we have money problems, or there's a death in the family, or God's not answering this prayer the way that I want him to, or this, that, or the other is happening, and all of a sudden we let go of God and we say, no, I'm going to pick up my pen, I can do a better job. I can write a better story. But we must remember that the story God is writing is not about us. It's his story. It's all about him. It's for his glory. We are but a part of his story. God's story is not about our comfort, it's about our character. It's about our absolute surrender. It's about us being willing to die to ourselves for the one that died for us. You see, he created us to fulfill a specific part of his story. And we are to surrender our pen to allow God to write that story. Jesus himself said, I came to give life, and life to the full. Do we trust God to give us a full life? To live this way is difficult. Like Jacob, we have to come to a point where we say that no matter what, I will not let go of God. Teenagers, there's going to be so many things that come your way this year at school. You'll be mocked. You'll be made fun of. You may lose friendships. Are you willing to not let go of God and fulfill the promise that you made to him at camp? Adults, we need your prayer. All of us do. Adults, we need you to stand up and be people that are willing to allow God to write your story so they have examples of people that they can follow. God has a story that includes eternity for all of mankind. And we're willing to settle for a job, an occupation, safety and security in our family. What if God, in my 10 years of youth ministry, I have often felt that there's been several of my youth staff, several of the people that volunteer and work with me, that God has placed a call on their life. Maybe to start a ministry in the church. Maybe to leave their current job and occupation and go and serve God full time, go to seminary, go overseas, do short-term missions.